guys.
Small group, man.
So can you just catch us up on some injuries? Start with Goodwin. What's his status?
Yeah, Goodwin and Tartt are the only guys who will be questionable for the game, and Josh is ruled out.
Goodwin able to practice today, or
yeah, he was limited.
Is he favoring that leg significantly, or do you think he's going to be able to?
I'm questioning it. It's questionable.
And Sherman's fine, or?
Yeah, he practiced today, and he's not questionable, so he'll be going.
So what exactly can you get into? Is it related to the Achilles? Is it that leg, or is it the other issue with his other leg?
You can ask him, but I think there's wear and tear. I'd like to give him some time off, anyways. He's going through some stuff, as he will probably be all year, and don't want him going hard for all 3 days. And yesterday we felt that was a better day to rest him.
I've heard John say this, that the offense is different without Goodwin. Can you put that in anything? What is different about it when you don't have Goodwin to deploy?
Well, it's very important in our offense to have an extremely fast person out there, and anytime you have someone who can run by everybody on their field at any given time, it backs people off. It makes it harder for guys to come up there and grab you guys and hold as much, because you can go by them. And it also takes pressure off the other guys. Pettis has played a little too much here in the last couple of weeks, just for these first 2 weeks. Got a lot of confidence in him, but it's a lot to throw on him early, and it's just a trickle-down effect. So you always want to speed out there. That's why we got him here, and then it helps out the other receivers also.
But when you look at divvying up carries with Breida and Morris, do you look at the averages and say we'd like to give Breida more carries because he's averaging 8 yards a carry or whatever it is, or is that average part of his limited role in the way he's being used now?
Yeah, I think both. It's, average can tell you some things, but not everything. Depends if you look at all the runs. He definitely has had the longest one, which really helps your average. But he was doing good on the others too, so I wouldn't say that's the case. But I think it's very important for both of those guys to be fresh. So I think they play off each other very well. We'll go with the hot hand, but whoever the hot hand is eventually tires out. So we try to keep them both as fresh as possible. But when a guy does get on a roll, he usually is going to get more than the other.
Coach, how has Reuben Foster looked this week now that he's back?
He looked good. We were pumped to have him back. He spent these 2 weeks away, taking care of himself. He didn't skip a beat. He looked in shape. He was upbeat. We loved having him around.
You won a couple of 10 a.m. starts, if I remember correctly, at the end of last season. Anything to it, any knack to it, anything you picked up from that brings you to this one?
Yeah, I changed the schedule up on those wins, and it changed everything. No, everyone does.
Coach left-handed or something.
All right, and I've heard a lot about that stuff, and I learned last year it does wear on you traveling from the west to east. I've been on the East Coast most of my coaching career, and I never thought it was that big of a deal. Going east to west. I thought it would be the same when I came here, and it is a little different. I can't explain why. I'm sure science can, but when you go into those 10 a.m. starts and stuff, there's an effect. That's why we always try to go on Friday, 2 days in advance. But we didn't change anything up. The better you play, the better you have a chance of winning. And every time you don't win, there's plenty of excuses that can go into it. But it doesn't matter. You got to find a way to get it done.
You said the other day you went to Arrowhead a couple times as a fan. Is that right?
No, I went there as a cord holder. I used to hold the cords for the head coach because we didn't have wireless back in the day. So my last time there was 1997. It was the divisional round game. I think they were 13-3. Rich Gannon had played, took over Elvis Gerback, who broke his collarbone earlier in the year, and then Elvis came back in for that playoff game, and they had a real good. I think the Broncos won like 17-10, but that was last year that people were holding cords. So.
Were you holding cords in the '94 game when Joe played Steve? The Niners, when your dad was coordinator here?
No, I wasn't. My dad wasn't the head coach then, so I didn't have as much of a hookup. But I would have liked to. And I was a little younger too, but I always joke. A good trivia is I was the last guy to hold cords in the Super Bowl. Broncos versus Green Bay Packers. That was last year they had before they went wireless. So it's my claim to fame.
You didn't mess it up. That's why they had to switch to wireless.
Definitely. That was good luck. Tripped a little too many people.
Generally, when a player like a Josh Gordon comes available, how much time do you spend just on that process with John when, in the middle of the season, you're game planning? busy
Yeah,
with?
we take time and talk about all that stuff. Especially having a relationship with Josh or knowing him, spending some time with him. So we talk about all those things, and we looked into it. Josh would have been a great bonus for anybody, but there's always stuff that you got to give up things to get it, and that stuff can hurt you and affect you in the future. But Josh is a guy that I really like a lot as a person. Everyone knows how good of a player he is. He's in a real good place. That'll give him a good chance, and I wish him the best there.
You guys obviously made the trade for Garoppolo. John had said you were talking about Khalil Mack. That's an aggressive mind. I mean, do you want an aggressive mindset? Obviously, you like the players you have, but do you tell John, let's be out there. Let's take a look at what's available.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's when you're talking about people who are extreme difference makers, you do everything you can to try to add those type of guys to your team, and especially when it came into the first guy you mentioned with the pass rush and everything. I mean, those are legit things that I think I would hope everyone in the league would look into hard. And then you got to think about salary cap, think about how you're going to balance contracts, what that means, not just right now, but what it means next year, who you can re-sign next year, who you have to lose, how you're going to spend the draft next year. There's so many more things that go into it, and just, is that guy a good player or not?
Was it, I don't want to get into details of it, was it like their offer, your offer, their offer, I mean, were you as far deep into that?
Which one?
For Mac?
Yeah, we went pretty hard. Yeah, we went real hard.
When you look at, Ruben said, sometimes he gets overwhelmed, or he got overwhelmed when he had to make the calls on the field, and obviously you took that responsibility away for him, and now Fred has that. But looking at them, it seems like they have very different personalities. Both Fred's a little bit more reserved, soft-spoken, and Ruben's very out there and has a big personality. Did you was that part of the evaluation you made, how those personalities fit, and do you think those guys balance each other out?
Yeah, I do, but everything starts with how you play, and then once you pass that, which usually you can see it on tape, then you look into everything else. And you love what you see on tape, and then you meet someone, and I've overrated how they act and their personality, and made it change my opinion on how good of a player he is. And I've made mistakes doing that. And sometimes you fall in love with what you see on tape, and then you ignore how he acts as a person. I've made some mistakes with that too. So every situation's different. We love both of those guys, what we saw on tape. When we got them here, we loved how both of them handled themselves. Very different personalities, but what we feel are very good people who you can count on, who football is extremely important to. So putting them in there, they both have talents that really help each other, and the personalities I do think helps. I think you said it perfect. Ruben's revved up and ready to go, and Fred can get like that too also, but I think the calls and stuff doesn't affect him as much as it did Rube.
How much confidence were you able to have in Fred that he wouldn't be overwhelmed in that Week 1 environment, being his first ever game and having to relay the signals?
We had a lot, and just because of how he handled himself the first day he got here. I compare him and McGlinchey are very similar in that way. They both kind of came in, and from their first press conference to the first game in Minnesota, nothing really. They were never too high, never too low. Those guys were always the same. Nothing seemed too big for them, which means they are confident people, and they're people who, they're not going to be perfect, but I think they're the type of guys who feel if you give them the time, they'll figure it out, and they'll always find a way to get it done.
Has he had the headset ever go out on him yet in a game?
Fred?
Fred, yeah.
I don't know. I don't think so.
How about Jimmy?
Yeah, Jimmy has, and I don't get what the stress is on defense. The play calls cover 3. On offense, it's a lot longer, so it's I don't get the stress.
Did it happen this season, like Minnesota? Or?
With Jimmy?
Yeah.
Well, it always goes out at 15 seconds.
Right.
So that's always a problem. If we have a late sub or something, or you want to change the play, and you're starting it at 17 seconds, and sometimes it takes 2.5 seconds to call it. It goes out right in the middle, and then it's all right. Did he know what I was going to say? If not, then you got to burn a timeout, or we go into an automatic play that he's just ready for.
Alfred has mentioned that he feels that the offense, as far as running backs catching passes, has changed since his time first with you in Washington, and obviously he caught 2 passes last Sunday. Where do you think the shift happened? Was that in Atlanta with those backs?
It just depends on personnel. It'll change every year depending on who we have. No offense to Alf, but he wasn't a featured back out of the backfield when I had him early in his career, so we weren't going to keep doing that to him over and over. When we were in Cleveland, we had a very similar thing. When we got to Atlanta, Devontae excelled in that area, so that's something that you always want to have a huge part in your offense. And if you got a guy who can do it, it puts a ton of a stress on the defense. And I messed with Alf. He had he had 2 explosives last week. You know, they're both checkdowns versus zone, but he got 16 yards on both. So he's turning into a pass game guy. So hopefully we can use him more that way.
You've been involved in personnel, and certainly in Atlanta, probably a little bit in Cleveland, Washington for sure. Certainly now, some coaches aren't as involved as assistants. When did you realize how important that was? It was from your dad, and when did you feel like you had a knack for it?
I don't know. I don't think there was ever a time. I have a hard time understanding how you can be a good coach without doing that stuff. I mean, if we're not just, we didn't steal someone's playbook when I was 10 years old and just carry it around like in Waterboy and call the plays that were written up. You study offense and you learn stuff and you think of how to put body movements and positions and matchups that make people successful. So in order to know why to call plays and how to put people in positions, you better have a good understanding on how a running back can beat a linebacker, how a tight end can beat a safety, how a slot receiver can separate even though he might not have the same speed, how you use a fast guy on the outside. If you don't understand all that, I think it's pretty hard to put in an offense.
Coach, earlier this week you said you wanted to wait to see how things kind of settled in with Ruben being back. Do you have a clearer picture now of that linebacker alignment?
Yes, very clear.
Sure.
Nope. Sorry, good try though.
With Richard, as far as the rest of the year, do you have to maybe change his practice schedule?
Yeah, and we do that. You'll probably get mad at me for saying the word older player, so it's not old, but the older players, you do that a lot, and not exert. I think Sherm's 30.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody like right at that 39 age, we try to change their practice schedule a little bit. Everyone at that age and everyone's a little bit different, but once you hit that 38 mark, from a starting point, we don't always like to practice you all 3 days. Some guys we do. It depends on how much they go and stuff. But as the year gets going, not just Sherm, but anyone really over 30 will probably be having their practice schedule altered.
If Jaquiski can't go, how do you find the balance of is it just one guy that would replace him and play that one spot the whole game, or do you mix and match a group of guys to figure out?
We have a number of options with that, so that's also why I'm not going to say exactly, because we could go a bunch of directions. You guys all know Jimmy Ward can play that spot. DJ Reed can play both safeties. We have Exum, who's backed up. Tartt can come in at any time. We have guys on the practice squad we could bring up, so lots of options we could do.
All right.
Thanks guys.